Rack of lamb, a tender and delicious cut of meat. Unlike beef, for example, where you could have a filet mignon, the most tender cut, and say a ribeye steak, a very flavorful cut. The difference in those is fat gives you the flavor in the ribeye, and the unused nature of the tenderloin gives it its tenderness, but not quite as much flavor. When you have something like a rack of lamb, however, it's sought after and prized because it is extremely tender due to the young age of the lamb, and it's flavorful due to the nature of lamb just being tasty. So I'm going to show you today how to cook this rack of lamb. I'm Executive Chef James Anthony MacInnis.
All right, so we got some potatoes on the cutting board. I love potatoes with rack of lamb. It is obviously, to me, the best starch for most things. I just love potatoes. And when it comes to a rack of lamb, I think that a nice mashed potato with elevated up to match the rack, of course, naturally, is the way to go. So for this potato, what I've decided to do is to dice it up small. That way we can boil it fast for mashed. This is the first thing that we're going to be putting on the stovetop because this is going to take the longest. Believe it or not, cooking the rack of lamb is going to be the last thing that we do. I made this whole dinner, start to finish, 25 minutes. I put some frozen blueberries and some balsamic vinegar in a pot, and I put it on just to bring it to a boil. When I deal with asparagus, I like to snap about 5-6 ends, take an average of that, and then cut. That way I get rid of all my hard ends. Now, I had a bit of a camera snafu, so you didn't get to see any montage of seasoning that. I just used some balsamic vinegar, oil, salt, and pepper. Now, we're going to cut up the lamb right now into its individual chops. That way it'll cook a lot faster than roasting it whole.
So you can see how little fat there is on the inside, but it does have this nice cap on the outside.
Now that we've got the rack of lamb all cut up, we're going to season it. We're going to season it like you mean it. And what I mean by that is you want to be aggressive enough that it's worthwhile. Remember, this is a $22 rack of lamb. There's nothing worse than getting this and being underwhelmed by no flavor from a lack of seasoning. Use whatever flavor profile you enjoy the most. I tend to go with salt, pepper, thyme, and garlic powder. Season both sides, lightly oil. That way it won't stick. We're going to skip ahead to the asparagus first. The reason I did it like this is because the rack of lamb, being as thin as it is, and I only want a medium rare, is not going to take that long to cook. So I put some char on the asparagus. Then I sat it off to the side on a baking sheet, and I popped it in a 250 degree oven. In the restaurant industry, that's about the temperature for a warming oven. You can see I have my blueberries off. They didn't blister. I wasn't too aggressive with the simmering. I'm going to hit those again with an immersion blender at the end of cooking. But right now my potatoes are basically finished. I'm going to drain off most of the water and start mashing them.
I hate to interrupt the video, but if you're getting any value from what I'm doing here, please feel free to subscribe, comment, and hit the like button. I'll get right back to the video now.
You only need about 90% of the water drained off. You want to keep about 10% to help add some liquid. I'm seasoning the potatoes with salt, pepper, garlic powder, no surprise, goat cheese, and mayonnaise. That's what's going to give it its creaminess. I'm not using any milk or butter. Now I'm finishing to mash them with my hand masher here. I'm not using a blender or a food processor, but I am going to put them into a ricer. A small ricer like this is perfect for 2 portions. And to rice it right back into the pot. If I had to do 3, 4, 5 portions, I'd need to get another bowl out. So I can just load up this ricer with basically everything out of the pot and then run it through. Clean the ricer with the spatula to get everything in there. That's going to give you nice, delicious, creamy rack of potatoes for your rack of lamb. Now let's get the rack onto the indoor grill. Cast iron grill, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. My GE stove has a power boil feature on the front right burner that has 3 gas jets as opposed to the 1 gas jet that every other burner has. Even the big center burner only has 1 gas jet, so that's why I like to put it over here. We're just gonna flip it a few times, make sure we get nice diamond lines for presentation. You cook this as long as you want. If you don't like medium rare or rare meat, nobody's making you eat that. You cook this all the way. Like I said earlier, this is a luxury item. There's nothing worse than getting something that costs as much as this does and have it not cooked the way that you want. So don't be afraid to say, I want it well, or I want it rare. I have one customer that comes into the restaurant once a month, gets this blue. As rare as I can make, it's what he wants. Over here, I got the immersion blender out, and we're just going to turn that into a puree. If it's too tart, add some sugar. If it's not tart enough, add some more vinegar. You can play around with it to make it taste just how you like, but I wouldn't put anything else in it. After we're done with the grill lines, we're going to go over to the counter and start plating up this delicious rack of lamb. All right, so I chose a white plate simply because of the color of the sauce. I know the white plate and the potatoes don't contrast well, but when you put the green asparagus on top of the potatoes, it makes the asparagus stand out. You take a dark purple sauce like blueberry sauce and smear it across the front, and then take your lamb. Now, traditionally, mint sauce, mint jelly, but I personally think that's gross. So this is how I like to serve rack of lamb. There you have it, how to make a rack of lamb with mashed potatoes, asparagus, and a blueberry sauce. The goat's cheese in the mashed potatoes goes very good with the rack. Which is very tender and full of flavor. If you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time in my kitchen.